When Michael Jordan walked into a small Chicago diner on a cold October night, he was just looking for a quiet meal and some peace. He had been famous for so long that normal things, a grocery store, a movie theater, a walk down the street, had become impossible. So when his team found a little restaurant called the Blue Spoon with a private back booth and no cameras, Michael said yes. He just wanted to sit down, eat something warm, and breathe. He was not expecting anything else. But the moment he stepped through that door, something happened that had never happened to Michael Jordan before. He froze, not slowed down, not paused, froze. His foot stopped in the air. His chest forgot how to pull in air. His assistant walked straight into his back because Michael had stopped so suddenly, without warning, without any sign that anything was wrong. And then his assistant looked across the restaurant to see what had stopped the most famous basketball player in the world dead in his tracks. There was a woman moving between the tables. She was moving fast, the way people move when they are tired but cannot afford to slow down. Her hair was pulled back in a loose knot. She wore a faded blue apron over a white uniform shirt. One button at her collar had been replaced with a small silver safety pin that caught the light every time she turned. And she was very, very pregnant. 7 months. Maybe 8. She was carrying a tray of hot soup between strangers in a little diner, working for tips. With swollen feet and an aching back and a tired smile she gave to every table like it cost her nothing. Even though anyone paying attention could see that it cost her something. Michael Jordan paid attention because that woman, that tired, pregnant waitress carrying soup across a small restaurant, was someone he knew, someone he had loved. Someone he had lost. She was Celeste Drummond, his ex-wife, and she had no idea he was standing 10 feet behind her. For 3 years, Michael Jordan had told himself he had moved on. 3 years since the divorce was signed. 3 years since she walked out of the courthouse in a gray wool coat and breathed in the cold air of her new life. 3 years since she left 11 words on the kitchen counter that he had read every single day since and could never stop thinking about. And now here she was, in an apron, with a safety pin where a button used to be, carrying soup, while he stood there with 6 championship rings and a billion-dollar name and no idea what to do with either of them. Here is what you need to know. This is not a simple story. This is not the story you think it is. Because what Michael did not know, what he could not have known standing in that doorway with his foot still in the air, was that Celeste Drummond had built something extraordinary in those 3 years, something real and hard-earned and entirely hers. And what Celeste did not know, standing at the kitchen door with her back straight and her voice steady, was that the biggest moment of her life had nothing to do with Michael Jordan at all. It was coming in January, and it would change everything. Well, before this night is over, Michael will ask Celeste one question, and she will give him an answer that he will carry for 3 months without understanding what it means. An answer so simple and so careful that it will keep him awake at night trying to see the shape of what she already knows. What did she say to him? What was coming in January that neither of them saw? And what is the secret that has been hiding underneath this entire story? The one that was there from the very beginning, moving quietly in the background, waiting for exactly the right moment to arrive. Stay with us through the whole story, because the ending is not what anyone expects. And once you hear it, you will want to go back to the beginning and listen to everything differently. This is the story of Michael Jordan, Celeste Drummond, Tony, and the night a frozen moment in a small Chicago diner unlocked a truth that 3 years of silence had been keeping. It starts the day he met her, and it ends the day she said one word that changed everything. Let's begin. Michael Jordan met Celeste Drummond when he was 26 years old and already one of the most famous people on earth. It was 1989. The Chicago Bulls were winning more than they were losing, and the whole city felt it. Felt it in the way strangers talked to each other on the train, in the way kids wore red and black on school days, in the way the sports pages screamed his name every single morning like a prayer. Michael was on the cover of every magazine that counted. His face was on billboards 14 feet tall. You could buy his sneakers, drink the soda he smiled at, eat the cereal with his name on the box. He had been famous for a few years by then, but that year the fame went up another level entirely. The way a fire doubles when the wind finds it. He could not go anywhere normal anymore. A grocery store was impossible. A movie theater was a nightmare. Even a drive-through window had become a problem because someone always recognized the car. He had stopped doing regular things without thinking about it, the way you stop swimming in the ocean after a bad sting, gradually and then all at once. But on one rainy Tuesday in March, his car broke down 3 blocks from the Chicago Public Library on Michigan Avenue. He was supposed to be somewhere else. He was always supposed to be somewhere else. His driver called and said it would be 40 minutes. Michael looked up at the rain, which was coming down the way Chicago rain does in March, sideways and personal, and he pulled his hood up low over his face and walked to the nearest door, which happened to belong to the library. Nobody noticed him. That was the first surprise. He stood inside the entrance for a moment, dripping, and breathed in. The library had that smell, the particular smell of old paper and warm air and something quieter underneath, something he could not name but which felt, suddenly and powerfully, like being a child again. Like being somebody's kid before the whole world knew his name. He wandered, past the front desk where a man with reading glasses was stamping books, past the long tables where students sat with their heads bent over their notebooks, and past the children's section with its bright colors and low shelves, and the wide picture windows where the rain was running down the glass in long silver lines. In the back of the library there was a reading room. It had 4 round tables and a shelf of magazines along one wall, and 3 armchairs that had been there long enough to have earned their own personalities. The room was almost empty. Almost. In the far corner, a young woman was reading out loud. She sat in one of the old armchairs with a little boy in her lap. 4 years old, maybe 5, with sneakers that lit up red when he moved his feet. A picture book was open between them, and the woman was doing all the voices. The dragon in the story was scared of his own fire. He kept accidentally burning his own tail. The princess, instead of running away, Royce sat down across from the dragon and taught him to breathe smoke rings instead. The woman did the dragon's voice low and confused and a little embarrassed. She did the princess's voice like someone who had been right about something all her life and was trying to be polite about it. The little boy in her lap was shaking with laughter. Full body shaking, the kind only children do, the kind that looks like it might knock them off their seat. Michael Jordan stood in the doorway of the reading room and did not move. Her name was Celeste Drummond. He did not know that yet. He knew nothing about her yet except what he could see. She was young, early 20s, with dark eyes and her hair pulled back in a loose bun that had been losing the fight with gravity since probably that morning. She wore a gray sweater with a small hole near the left cuff. She had a stack of 3 more picture books on the table beside her, already selected and ready, as if she had planned the whole afternoon in advance. She looked completely at home in that chair, in that corner, in that story, in a way that Michael Jordan had not felt at home anywhere in longer than he could remember. When the little boy's mother appeared in the doorway and said it was time to go, the boy groaned the groan of a person who has just been pulled out of something wonderful. The woman helped him down from the chair carefully and said, "Same time next week." He ran to his mother with his sneakers flashing red. The woman looked up. She saw Michael standing there. She did not scream. She did not reach for her phone or grab someone's arm or cover her mouth. She simply looked at him the way you look at someone who has walked into the wrong room. Curious, calm, a little amused. "Story time ended 10 minutes ago," she said, "but you can stay if you want." I was about to start a new one. Michael Jordan looked around the reading room. He found a child-sized chair, the kind meant for 6-year-olds, about 6 inches off the floor. He pulled it over and sat down. His knees came up to approximately his chest. His head was 3 feet above the back of the chair. The woman looked at him sitting there. This enormous, famous man folded into a tiny chair with his elbows on his knees, and she laughed. A real laugh. Not a polite laugh, not a careful laugh, not the kind people gave him when they were hoping he would notice them. Just a laugh because it was funny. He could not remember the last time someone had laughed at him instead of for him. "You're the basketball player," she said, not a question. "I am," he said. "And you're reading picture books on a Tuesday afternoon?" "It was raining," he said, "and you were doing all the voices." She tilted her head a little, considering this. "I'm Celeste," she said. "I work here on Tuesdays. Can I find something for you? A book? A magazine?" "I was looking for quiet," he said honestly. Then before he could stop himself, "I think I found something better." She raised one eyebrow. She was not impressed by the line. She was not charmed by it either, not in the way people usually were when he said things. She just looked at him steadily, as if waiting to find out whether there was something real behind it. "We have books on humility," she said, "if you need them." He laughed, loudly, completely. He had not done that either in longer than he could remember. They talked for 45 minutes. They talked until the librarian at the front desk began switching off the lights section by section, sending gentle darkness across the room in slow waves. They talked about books. She asked what he had last read that was not a contract, and he admitted it had been a while, and she did not act surprised or disappointed, just pulled 3 books off the shelf beside her and told him why each one mattered and what kind of person it was for. She asked him what it felt like to hold a basketball in his hands. He told her, honestly, that it was the only thing in the world he had ever understood without being taught. She nodded at that like it made perfect sense. He did not give her his number when he left. He did not ask for hers. He walked out into the rain. His driver had been waiting in the car for 51 minutes, and he sat in the back seat and said nothing the whole ride home. But the next Tuesday, he came back. He wore the same gray hood. He walked to the reading room. Celeste was already there. Same chair, same stack of books beside her, reading to 2 children this time. She looked up when he sat down in the tiny chair. She did not say anything about the fact that he had returned. She just moved to the next page and kept reading. He stayed for an hour. The Tuesday after that, he came back again. For 4 months, Michael Jordan came to that library on Tuesday afternoons and sat in the reading room and talked to Celeste Drummond. He told her about growing up in Wilmington, about his father, about what the court felt like under his feet in the seconds before a game began, when everything was still possible. She told him about her grandmother's house in Savannah, the kitchen that smelled like sweet potato and coffee, the porch where the whole neighborhood gathered on summer nights, the feeling of being somewhere that was completely safe. She never wanted anything from him. That was the thing he could not get over. Every person in his world wanted something: his name, his presence, his time, his money, his reflected light. Even the people who loved him wanted something. But Celeste Drummond, sitting in her reading room on Tuesday afternoons, wanted nothing except a good conversation, and occasionally for him to agree that certain books deserved more attention than the world was giving them. He asked her out on a real date in July. A private dinner, he said, somewhere quiet. She said yes, but only somewhere neither of them had ever been, and only if he promised not to order for her. He kept that promise. It was the first of many. Nobody tells you what fame does to a marriage from the inside. From the outside, the marriage of Michael Jordan and Celeste Drummond looked just fine. More than fine. They were photographed at charity events in clothes that matched without trying to match. They smiled at cameras the easy way, not the stiff, pressed smile of people performing happiness, but the relaxed kind that makes you believe it. Celeste was gracious at every public event. She remembered names. She asked real questions. She never said an unkind word about anyone in any interview she ever gave, and she gave very few. Michael always mentioned her name when he talked about his life, not as an accessory, as a fact, as the most important fact. From the outside, they had gotten it right. But a marriage is not what it looks like from the outside. It is what happens at 11 o'clock at night when the cameras are gone, and the house is quiet and 2 people are sitting in the same room, and one of them is so far away that the other might as well be talking to the wall. The distance started small. That is how it always starts. Michael began spending more time away. Not just the road trips. Everyone understood that. It was basketball. It was the job. But then came the other trips. The endorsement meetings in New York. The golf weekends in Florida, with men he barely knew who talked about his brand like it was a building they were all renovating together. He started staying in hotels even when he was in Chicago. Easier for focus, he said. He needed to be sharp. He needed to prepare. Celeste nodded. She always nodded. She understood things without needing them explained, which was one of the things he had loved most about her, and which he was now using against her without realizing it. She had given up her library job 2 years after the wedding. Michael had never asked her to. He would not have done that. But the attention that followed her everywhere had made the job impossible. Reporters started showing up. One sat in the library for 3 full hours, pretending to read an encyclopedia, waiting for Celeste to walk past. When she did, he ambushed her with questions about Michael's contract and his relationship with the team's front office. She answered calmly and professionally and went home that night and sat at the kitchen table for a long time. She stopped going in the following week. She tried to write instead. She had always wanted to write a book. Since she was 8 years old, she had carried that wand around like a small stone in her pocket. Always there, always felt. Not always looked at. She had notebooks going back 15 years. Stories, characters, fragments of things that felt important. She set up a desk in the back room of their house and started writing in the mornings, before the day got loud. Michael said he was proud of her. He asked how the book was going. When she told him, he nodded. He said that was great. Then his phone rang and he was gone again, into the other half of his life, the half she could see from the outside, but could not quite reach. She finished the book after 2 years of early mornings. She sent it to publishers. 3 of them wrote back with real interest. One, a small press in New York run by a woman named Patricia Holt, who had been publishing honest books for 30 years, said yes. The day Celeste got the call, Michael was in Las Vegas at a golf tournament. She called him twice. He did not pick up. She left a voicemail. She tried to keep her voice steady. She said, "Michael, I got the call. They said yes. I am a real writer now. I love you." He called back 4 hours later. "Tani," he said, "congratulations." He said he was proud. His voice was warm but not quite present, the way a voice sounds when a person is in a room full of other people and trying to have a private moment that the room will not allow. She could hear ice clinking in a glass. She could hear laughter that did not belong to anyone she knew. She said thank you. She said she would tell him everything when he got home. She hung up and sat alone in the quiet house with the book deal letter on the kitchen table in front of her and understood something she had been refusing to understand for a long time. She was not the center of his life anymore. She was not sure she had been for some time. She was something he returned to, like a favorite chair, like a habit, but not something he moved toward, not something he chose. Every day, the way you have to choose a person if you want to keep them. That was not the moment the marriage ended. She did not leave that night. She was not someone who ran from things, but it was the moment a small crack appeared in the foundation, the kind of crack that looks harmless until the season changes and the ground shifts and suddenly the whole wall has moved. The real breaking point came in the spring of 1998, the last championship year. Her name was Dana Ferris. She was a sports journalist, sharp, confident, always in the right room at the right time. She had been assigned to follow the Bulls through the final season. She was good at her job. She was also very good at being exactly the kind of person that a man reaches for when he has been away from home for so long that home starts to feel like a place he read about once. And Michael told Celeste that Dana was a professional contact, a journalist, a source. Celeste believed him because she had always believed him, because trust had been the ground they built everything on, and she was not ready to find out the ground was gone. Then a woman named Rosalie Vance, who worked in the same building as the sports network and had known Celeste since college, called her one afternoon and said very carefully that she thought Celeste should know something. She sent a photograph. It had been taken through the window of a restaurant on the north side of the city. Michael and Dana Ferris in a corner booth, leaning close together, his hand on top of hers on the table. Not the hand of a man talking to a journalist, the hand of a man who had made a decision and was pretending, even to himself, that he had not. Her Celeste looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she put her phone face down on the counter. She did not yell. She did not break anything. She had never been that kind of person, and she was not going to become one now. She went to the bedroom and pulled a bag from the top shelf of the closet and packed it the way she packed everything. Neatly, efficiently, only what she needed. She called her friend Imani Brooks, who had a spare room and never asked unnecessary questions. Imani said, "Come now." Celeste left one piece of paper on the kitchen counter. She wrote 11 words on it. She did not look back at the house when she walked out. Michael came home 2 hours later to the still empty rooms and the note on the counter. He read it. He read it again. He read it 7 times. In the way you read something when the words are simple but the weight of them is enormous, and you are hoping that one more reading will change what they mean. The note said, "I loved you before anyone else loved you for your shoes. That is the part that hurts the most." He called her. She answered. He said everything he should have said years before, all of it in a rush, the way people finally say true things when the door is almost closed. He was sorry. Dana meant nothing. Celeste was the only real thing in his life, the only thing he had built that actually mattered. And he had been an idiot and a coward, and he knew it. She listened to everything he said. Then she said, "I know you mean that right now, Michael. I believe you mean it. But meaning something in the moment you almost lost it is not the same as choosing it every day when it was easy to take for granted." He had no answer for that, because she was right. She had always been able to say the truest thing in the fewest words. She did not file for divorce immediately. She gave them 6 more months, marriage counseling 3 times a week, with a quiet man named Dr. Ellison, who had an office full of ferns and spoke in a voice that never rose above a conversation. Michael went to every session. He was honest in those rooms in a way he had not been honest anywhere in years. He said things out loud about himself that he had never admitted even in private. But something in Celeste had shifted. She could feel it and could not unfeel it. It was not that she had stopped loving him. She hadn't. The love was still there, real and old and deep. But she understood now, clearly and without bitterness, that loving someone was not the same as being safe with them. And she had spent enough of her life in rooms that looked safe but were not. The divorce was finalized in January of 1999. Celeste walked out of the courthouse in a gray wool coat, squinting in the flat winter light, and breathed in. She had almost nothing. The settlement was fair enough to start over, but not enough to stay still. She had the manuscript of her published novel, a storage unit full of books, and the old Honda Civic that had somehow survived to 1999 with 200,000 miles on the engine, and a cracked passenger window she had fixed years ago with plastic wrap and tape. Still the same tape, still holding. As she drove to her new apartment in Lincoln Square, she carried her boxes up 3 flights of stairs. She put the kettle on. She sat at her new desk, just a folding table from the hardware store, and she opened her notebook to a blank page. She was starting over, from the very beginning, the way she had always been best at. And for 3 years, Michael Jordan's life and Celeste Drummond's life did not cross. Until the night of October 14th, until the Blue Spoon, until Michael Jordan walked through a door he had not planned to walk through and saw, across a small Chicago diner, the woman he had let go, tired and pregnant and carrying a tray of hot soup between strangers. And his feet stopped working entirely. That is where we are now. That is where the real story begins. See, Theo Garland was 24 years old and had been working as Michael Jordan's personal assistant for 8 months. In that time, he had learned a great many things. He had learned that Michael took his coffee black and his silence seriously. He had learned that Michael could not sleep on flights below 10,000 feet and always needed a window seat, not for the view but for the wall to lean against. He had learned that Michael liked old Motown in the car before home games. Not loud, just present, like a conversation happening in another room. He had learned that Michael Jordan did not lose his composure. Not in public, not in private, not ever, as far as Theo had seen. Which is why what happened on the night of October 14th stopped Theo cold. Where they had come to the Blue Spoon because the restaurant's owner had promised a private back booth and no cameras and a kitchen that closed late. Michael had been in meetings all day, long, careful meetings about the future of a basketball franchise, and he wanted food and quiet and nothing else. Theo had called ahead. Everything was arranged. They walked in out of the October cold, and Michael stopped. Not slowed down, not paused, stopped. His right foot was still in the air. His whole body went the way a photograph goes. Perfectly, completely still. Theo walked into his back. "MJ?" Theo said. He stepped to the side and looked at Michael's face. Something was happening there that Theo had no category for. Michael's jaw was set, but his eyes were open, wide open. The way eyes get when something arrives before the brain is ready for it. Theo followed his gaze across the restaurant. A woman was moving between the tables. She moved fast and efficiently, the way a person moves when they are tired but cannot afford to let it show. Her dark hair was pulled back in a knot that had been neat hours ago and was losing the argument now. She wore a faded blue apron over a white uniform shirt. One button at her collar had been replaced with a small silver safety pin that caught the light each time she turned. Her belly was round and full and unmistakable. She was very pregnant. 8 months at least, maybe more. She was carrying a tray of soup to a table in the corner. She set it down with the careful, tilted grace of someone who has learned to move around a new center of gravity. She smiled at the couple at the table, a real smile, not a working one, and said something that made the woman laugh. Theo looked back at Michael. Michael had not moved. "Sir," the host said carefully, appearing at Michael's elbow with 2 menus and the practiced smile of someone who has recognized a famous customer and is trying very hard not to make it a moment. "Your booth is ready, right this way." Michael did not look at him. Theo put a hand on Michael's arm. "MJ, you need to move." Michael blinked. He turned his head toward Theo slowly, like a man coming back from somewhere far away. His eyes focused. He breathed. "I need a minute," he said. His voice was low and even, but something underneath it was neither. "Of course," Theo said, though he had no idea what a minute was supposed to solve. Across the diner, Celeste finished with the couple at table 7 and turned to collect her empty tray. She tucked her order pad back into her apron pocket. She rolled her shoulders once, the private gesture of someone managing something they do not want to complain about, and turned toward the kitchen, and stopped. She saw him. It lasted 1 second, maybe less. She looked at Michael and Michael looked at her, and the whole restaurant kept moving around them. Forks on plates, the low murmur of other people's conversations, the hiss of something on the grill behind the kitchen door, and neither of them moved inside of it. Then Celeste straightened her back. She adjusted the tray under her arm. She walked toward the kitchen without hurrying. Michael was already moving before he had decided to move. He crossed the restaurant in a few long strides, weaving between the tables, and reached the kitchen door just as she did. "Celeste!" She stopped. Her back was to him. Her hand was on the kitchen door. He watched her shoulders rise and fall with one slow breath. Then she turned around. He had not seen her face in 3 years, 2 months and 11 days. He had not been counting, except that some part of him apparently had been. The part that keeps track of things you tell it not to. She looked older the way good things look older. Not worn out, but worn in. There were fine lines at the corners of her eyes that had not been there before. Her face was fuller now, partly from the pregnancy, partly from something else. From living, maybe, from 3 years of a life that was entirely her own. Her eyes were exactly the same. To deep brown and careful, and reading him the way they had always read him, all the way through, seeing more than he would have chosen to show. "Michael," she said. Her voice was calm, not cold, not warm, just steady. The way a person is steady when they have practiced being steady for a long time because they had to. He opened his mouth. He was not sure what he had planned to say. He had not planned anything. He had not planned any of this. "You're—" He stopped. He was not going to say it the clumsy way. "Pregnant," she said. A small, clear nod. "Yes. Are you okay?" She looked at him. Something moved behind her eyes. Quick, private, gone before he could name it. "I'm working," she said. "I know, I just—" He stopped again. Michael Jordan, who had given 10,000 interviews and spoken in front of packed arenas and negotiated contracts with men who made it their job to break him down. He could not find a single word that felt right. "I didn't know you were here. In Chicago. I didn't know you were—" "Why would you?" she said. "Not unkind. Just true." The kitchen door swung open. A young man stuck his head out. Early 20s, dark curly hair, a cook's apron dusted with flour. He looked at Michael with the wide eyes of someone who recognized a famous face, then looked at Celeste with a different kind of look entirely. The look of someone who knows a person well enough to ask without asking. "Everything okay, Cece?" he said. "Fine, Marco," she said. "Easy, certain. 2 meatloaf specials for table 7, please." "On it." Marco disappeared back through the door. But his eyes found Michael one more time before the door swung shut. Celeste turned back to Michael. A look crossed her face, just for a moment, something that sat between exhaustion and decision. The look of a woman who has too much to carry and has gotten very good at choosing which things to set down and which to hold. "I have to get back to work," she said. "Can we talk?" Michael said. "After your shift, whenever you're done. I'll wait." She was quiet. Around them, the restaurant moved and breathed. The old couple at table 7 were looking at each other over their menus with the easy quiet of people who have shared so many meals they no longer need to fill the silence. Someone at the bar was laughing at something on the television. The kitchen smelled of butter and onion and something sweet underneath. Celeste looked at him for a long time. Longer than was comfortable. He held it. He owed her that much. To be looked at without flinching. "I'm off at 10, she said finally. "I'll be here," he said. She nodded once. One clean nod, no decoration. Then she turned back to the dining room, picked up her order pad, walked to table 7, and smiled at the old couple like she had not just been standing at the edge of something enormous. "2 meatloaf specials," she said. "Miss Patrice made them fresh this evening. You are going to love them." Michael stood where she had left him for a moment. Then he walked back to the front of the restaurant and slid into the private booth where Theo was sitting with a menu he had not opened and an expression that said he had approximately 40 questions and knew better than to ask any of them. "Ash, order me whatever," Michael said. He picked up a menu. The words on it were meaningless. "I don't care what." Theo nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. He paused. "Are you going to be all right?" Michael did not answer right away. He set the menu down. He looked across the restaurant to where Celeste was now laughing at something the old man at table 7 had said. A real laugh, brief and bright, there and gone. "I don't know yet," Michael said honestly. He spent the next 3 hours in that booth. He barely touched his food. Theo, to his credit, ate his meal, answered some emails on his phone, and said nothing more. He was a good assistant because he understood that some nights his job was simply to be present and invisible at the same time. Michael watched the clock above the bar. When he watched the restaurant thin out as the late evening moved toward night, he watched Celeste move between her tables, efficient, warm, careful, and he felt something building in his chest that he had not felt in 3 years. It was not hope exactly. Hope was too light a word for it. It was more like reckoning. The feeling of a man who has finally stopped moving fast enough to outrun the thing he left behind and has turned around and is standing still and is looking at it directly. He was going to need every second of the next 3 hours just to figure out what to say. He had never been more afraid of a conversation in his life, and Michael Jordan had played Game 7 of the NBA Finals in front of the whole world with 30 seconds left and his team down by 1. That at least told him something. Whatever was about to happen at 10 o'clock mattered more than any of that. While Michael sat in his booth and the clock above the bar moved slowly toward 10, the story of Celeste's 3 years needs to be told. Because the woman who stood at that kitchen door and said, "I'm working," with her chin level and her voice steady, was not the same woman who had walked out of the courthouse in January of 1999. She looked the same. She sounded the same. But something had been built inside her over those 3 years. The way calluses build on hands that do real work, slowly and without ceremony, layer by quiet layer. Something tough and earned and belonging entirely to her. She had moved into the Lincoln Square apartment with almost nothing. A mattress on the floor, a folding table for a desk, a bookshelf she and Imani had carried up 3 flights of stairs one Saturday morning, stopping at each landing to rest and argue cheerfully about which end was heavier. A kettle, 4 mugs, 1 good knife in the kitchen, because Celeste believed that a person could get by with almost nothing as long as they had 1 good knife. She had cooked rice and beans for the first 3 months because they were cheap and filling and required very little thought, and she needed all of her thinking for other things. She wrote in the mornings. That was the rule she made for herself and kept without exception. Before the shift, before the phone, before anything else, 2 hours at the folding table, with the notebook open and the kettle going and the street outside still quiet. She wrote the second novel slowly. It was closer to her own life than the first one had been, and that made it harder. Every page cost her something. She paid it anyway. She waitressed in the afternoons and evenings, first at a place on Belmont that smelled permanently of fryer grease and whose manager scheduled her for closing shifts 4 nights a week and called it a favor. She left after 2 months, Then she found the Blue Spoon. The Blue Spoon was owned by a woman named Miss Patrice Waller, 70 years old, sharp as a straight razor and twice as clean. She had opened the diner 31 years ago with her late husband's life insurance money and a recipe for meatloaf that people still drove across the city for. She paid her staff fairly, scheduled them like they had lives outside the diner because they did, and had a rule posted in the back room that said, "We do not treat each other small in here, not ever." Celeste had worked for Miss Patrice for just over a year now. It was, she had decided, one of the better decisions she had made since the divorce. Her novel, the first one, The Box Under the Bed, had been published in the fall of 1999 by the small press in New York. It received a handful of reviews. 2 of them were genuinely good. One called it quietly powerful, a debut that demands a second read. It sold 4,000 copies. That was not a number that changed a life financially, but it was a number that confirmed something Celeste had needed confirmed. That the things she had worked toward in the back room of someone else's house in the early mornings, while the famous life went on without her, was real. She was real. Sonra, the voice she had been building since she was 8 years old, since the library in Savannah, since the notebooks, it existed. Other people could hear it. She started the second novel the same week the first one came out. She did not celebrate for long. Celebrating for long had never been her way. She dated a man named Gerald Pace for 8 months in the year 2000. He was a high school history teacher who cooked Sunday dinners from scratch and read actual physical newspapers and laughed easily and often. He was kind in the specific, practical way of a person who has never needed kindness to be a performance. He loved Celeste with a straightforward honesty that asked nothing complicated in return. And that in the end was the problem. Not that Gerald was not enough. He was. He was genuinely good. But Celeste discovered, slowly, guiltily sitting across from him at dinner one evening while he described a field trip he was planning, that she was only ever half present with him, that the other half of her was somewhere she could not locate, looking for something she could not yet name. She ended it carefully. She told him the truth, that it was nothing he had done, that she was not ready for what she could see him wanting, that she was sorry. Gerald nodded. He was hurt but not bitter, which said everything about who he was. He shook her hand at the door, actually shook it firmly, like the closing of something that had been worth opening, and said he hoped she found what she was looking for. After Gerald, she did not date for a long time. She wrote, she worked. She went back to the library on Tuesday afternoons. Not to read to children this time, although she did that too when they needed her, but simply to sit in the reading room and be in the place where she had first understood what it felt like to be seen clearly by another person. She kept those Tuesday visits private. She did not tell anyone about them. Some things are only yours if you keep them. Then, in the early summer of 2001, she met Desmond Okafor. He came into the Blue Spoon on a Wednesday evening in June, alone, carrying a rolled tube of architectural drawings under one arm and looking like a man who had been inside too many meetings and needed something real to eat. He sat at the counter. He ordered the soup of the day without asking what it was, which Miss Patrice always said was the mark of a person who trusted the world a little more than most. Celeste brought him the soup. He said thank you and meant it. You could tell the difference, after enough years of waitressing, between the thank yous that were automatic and the ones that were real. Long day, she said. She did not usually make conversation with counter customers. She was not sure why she did now. Long month, he said. What do you do? He told her. Structural engineer. Lagos originally, London for the past 6 years, Chicago now for a 2-year contract. A new building going up on the south side. Something that was supposed to be beautiful and functional at the same time, which he said was harder than it sounded. He had a quiet way of talking about his work that made it clear he cared about it deeply without needing anyone to be impressed. What do you do? He said. I write, she said. And I bring people soup. He smiled. It was a slow smile, the kind that started in the eyes. Which one came first? The writing, she said. The soup pays better. He laughed. She moved to the next customer, but she thought about that slow smile for the rest of her shift, and she was not sure why, and she decided not to examine it too carefully. He came back the following Wednesday, and the one after that. By August, they were having dinner on evenings when Celeste was not working, at small restaurants neither of them had been to before, talking about everything and nothing with the ease of two people who have both spent enough time being lonely to know how rare it is to find someone worth the words. He was not like anyone she had known before. He listened with his whole body. He disagreed with her thoughtfully and without defensiveness. And he had opinions about books, real opinions, specific ones. And he was not afraid to be wrong about them. He made her feel for the first time since the library on Michigan Avenue like the most interesting person in the room. Not because she was famous, not because of whose name she used to carry, because of who she actually was. She was careful with that feeling. She had learned to be careful, but she was also slowly, honestly, with her eyes open, beginning to let it in. What neither of them knew yet was how the story of Desmond Okafor would end, or rather, how it would not end the way either of them expected. But that part comes later. For now, there is a booth in the Blue Spoon and a clock above the bar that reads 9:47. And a man who has been sitting in that booth for 3 hours with a plate of food he barely touched. And in 13 minutes, a woman is going to come out of the back room in her own coat and her hair down and her shift finally done. 13 minutes. Michael Jordan had once hit a game-winning shot with 5.2 seconds on the clock. He told himself 13 minutes was plenty of time. He was not sure he believed it. At 10 minutes to 10, Theo Garland came back from the front of the restaurant and slid into the booth across from Michael. He had been gone for most of the last hour, making calls, answering messages, doing all the quiet work that kept Michael Jordan's days from collapsing into each other. He set his phone face down on the table now, which meant he was done working for the night and was going to say something. "Do you want me to stay?" he said. "No," Michael said. "Are you sure? Because whatever this is..." "Theo." Michael looked at him directly. "Thank you. Good night." Theo held the look for one moment. Then he nodded, picked up his jacket from the seat beside him, and left. The door to the street opened and closed and brought in a brief breath of cold October air, and then was gone. Theo Garland was a good assistant because he knew the difference between support and intrusion. He had learned that distinction in 8 months of watching a very private man navigate a very public life. Tonight he had applied it perfectly. The restaurant was quiet now. The dinner crowd had cleared out in the last hour, leaving behind only a few people at the bar and the old couple at table 7, who were still there, still talking, still unhurried, sharing a slice of Miss Patrice's apple pie between them with 2 forks. The easy way of people who have shared 10,000 meals and do not need to perform enjoyment anymore. Just feel it. The jukebox near the bar had been cycling through songs all evening. It had settled now into something slow, a voice Michael recognized from his childhood, from his mother's kitchen on Sunday mornings, from a time before any of this. Marco came out of the kitchen with a mop and began working the floor in slow, wide circles near the back of the room. He glanced at Michael once, then again, then kept his eyes on his work. He was not afraid of Michael. He was protective of Celeste. Those were 2 different things, and he wore the second one plainly. The clock above the bar read 9:58. At 2 minutes past 10, the door to the back room opened. Celeste came out wearing her own coat. It was brown corduroy, slightly too large across the shoulders. Bought, Michael guessed, before the pregnancy reshaped everything. She had taken her hair down. It fell to her shoulders in soft waves, and she reached up once to tuck a piece of it behind her ear in the automatic way of someone who has done that particular motion 10,000 times without thinking about it. She carried her bag on one shoulder and moved with the careful, balanced walk of a woman in her final weeks of pregnancy, one hand occasionally dropping to her side as if ready to catch something, though she never quite needed to. She stopped at the bar and spoke quietly to Andre, the night manager, a tall young man with careful eyes who had spent the evening being professionally invisible while an extremely famous person sat in his restaurant for 3 hours not eating. Andre handed her a small envelope, her weekly pay. She tucked it into her coat pocket without looking at it and said something that made Andre nod and almost smile. Then she looked across the room. Michael was already standing. They met in the middle of the restaurant, between the bar and table 7, in the neutral space that belonged to neither of them. The old couple glanced over briefly, then returned to their pie with the tact of people who have lived long enough to know when something private is happening nearby. "Thank you for waiting," Celeste said. "Thank you for letting me," he said. She pulled out a chair at the nearest empty table and sat down with the deliberate care of someone navigating a body that has recently become a different size and shape than the one they have known their whole life. One hand on the chair back, one hand at her side. She settled, adjusted, and became still. Michael sat across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The restaurant breathed softly around them. Marco's mop made slow, wet circles on the far side of the room. The jukebox finished its song and chose another, and the new one was quieter still, barely more than a murmur of brass and voice. "How long have you been working here?" Michael asked. "About a year," she said. "And before that?" "I was writing." She said it simply, without apology or decoration. "So I finished the second novel." Something moved across his face. "That's incredible, Celeste." "It's what I do," she said, not dismissing the compliment, just placing it accurately. "What is it about?" he asked. She considered the question the way she always considered questions, giving it actual thought rather than the first available answer. "Leaving," she said, "and staying, the difference between the two. Why one looks like cowardice and the other like courage, and how sometimes they are switched around from what we assume." He held her eyes. He heard more in that than she had perhaps intended to put there, or perhaps she had intended exactly that. "Are you okay?" he said. "You asked me that earlier." "I know, I'm asking again." She looked at him, the steady, reading look, and the one that had always made him feel both seen and accountable at the same time. "I am tired," she said. "My back has been speaking to me in a language I cannot ignore for about 3 weeks. I worry about money the way you worry about a game, constantly, quietly in the background of everything else." She paused. She put one hand on her belly, the automatic gesture of a woman who has already begun the conversation with the person she has not yet met. "But I am not sad. I want to be clear about that. I chose this, all of it, and I choose it again every morning when I wake up. That is not the same as it being easy, but it is not sad." Michael nodded. He let that sit where she had put it without moving it. "Who is the father?" he said. Then immediately, "You don't have to answer that." "His name is Desmond," she said. A no hesitation. She was not a person who hid things. "He is in London. He knows about the baby. We are working out what that means from this distance." Her hand was still on her belly, light and certain. "It will be a boy." "A boy," Michael said. He said it softly, the way you say something when it lands in a place you were not expecting. "A boy," she said. The jukebox found Otis Redding, not loud, just present, the way good music always knows how to be. They were quiet for a moment, not the uncomfortable quiet of two people with nothing to say, the older, heavier quiet of two people with too much, who are choosing, carefully, what to bring out and what to leave where it is. "Why are you still working here, Celeste?" Michael said. "The settlement was enough to begin," she said. Not enough to stop." She looked at him steadily. "I am not a person who stops working, Michael. You know that about me." "I do," he said. He did. It was one of the 10,000 things he knew about her that he had not thought about carefully enough while he still had the daily chance. "But if you need anything at all, Michael." Her voice was gentle and precise, the way a hand is gentle when it stops something from falling. "Please don't." He stopped. "I am not telling you these things so that you write a check," she said. "I am telling you because you asked, and I have always believed in answering honest questions honestly. I was always honest with you." "You were," he said. "You were the only person who ever was completely." Something passed through her eyes at that, quick and old. "And why are you really here?" she said. "In Chicago. You have been in Washington." "I had business," he said. Then he stopped. Then he told the truth. "I think about you. I think about what you wrote on that note. I think about it more than I have told anyone." She was quiet. "I think about the library," he said. "The chair." The smallest thing moved at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. The shadow of one. the memory of one. "That was a long time ago," she said. "I know how long it was," he said. She looked down at her hands on the table. Bare. No rings of any kind. He noticed. He hated himself for noticing, and noticed anyway. "What do you want, Michael?" she said. A real question. The kind asked by someone who does not know the answer and is not certain the other person does either. He was quiet for a long time. The restaurant settled deeper into its nighttime sounds. The old couple rose slowly from table 7, helping each other with coats, leaving a folded bill under the edge of the pie plate. "I want to know that you are going to be okay," Michael said. She looked at him. "And if I'm not?" He leaned forward just slightly, his elbows on the table, his voice low and without performance. "Then I want to help you be." She did not answer immediately. She was reading him again, all the way through, looking for the thing underneath, for whether this was the old Michael speaking, the one who said the right things in the moment and meant them only until something else required his attention, or whether this was something new, something built, something earned the hard way, was the same way she had earned everything she now owned. She took her time. He let her. Then she said something he would carry with him for the next 3 months and would not fully understand until a cold morning in January. She said, "Ask me that again in 3 months." She stood up carefully. She pulled her coat around her. She looked at him one last time. Not warm, not cold, just clear, the way a window is clear when the weather on both sides of it is finally the same. "Good night, Michael," she said, and she walked out of the Blue Spoon into the October dark. Michael sat alone in the empty restaurant. Marco had stopped mopping. Andre had turned off half the bar lights. The jukebox had gone quiet. The apple pie plate on table 7 was all that remained of the old couple, and even that had been cleared away. He sat in the silence and said the words over again in his head. "Ask me that again in 3 months." He did not know what she meant. He could not see the shape of it yet. But he knew, in the place inside him that had always known things about Celeste before he understood them, that it was the most important sentence she had ever said to him. He left $100 on the table. He walked out into the cold. He did not feel it. There are 2 kinds of men when life hands them a moment that asks them to be better than they have been. The first kind sees the moment. He feels its weight. He steps into it the way you step into cold water, all at once, with his whole self, even though it costs him something. The second kind sees the same moment, feels the same weight, and then finds a reason to step back. He tells himself it is not the right time. He tells himself he will do it later, when things are calmer, when he is ready. He never gets ready, and later becomes the word he lives inside for the rest of his life. Michael Jordan had spent most of his years being the first kind of man on a basketball court and the second kind everywhere else. He understood this now. He had not always. Understanding it did not make it easier to sit with, but he sat with it anyway. The way you sit with a hard truth once you have finally let it in, carefully and for a long time. He did not call Celeste the day after the Blue Spoon. That was the first decision, and he made it deliberately. He knew her well enough still, knew the specific architecture of who she was, to understand that showing up in her life 2 days in a row after 3 years of silence would feel like pressure, not care. Celeste Drummond had never responded well to pressure, not because she was fragile, because she was not. She needed space the way strong things need space, not emptiness, but room. Room to think, room to decide, room to be the one who chose. So he did not call. What he did instead was quieter than a call and more expensive than a check. He reached out to a man named Roosevelt Banks, who ran a small nonprofit on Chicago's South Side that provided housing support and emergency assistance to families in transition. Michael had donated to Roosevelt's organization twice before, publicly, as at fundraising events where cameras were present. This time he called Roosevelt's personal number on a Wednesday morning and asked to give again. No event, no cameras, no press release. Roosevelt said he was grateful and asked what had prompted it. Michael said, "Someone reminded me that doing the right thing is not the same as being seen doing it." Roosevelt was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Amen to that." Michael asked him specifically not to mention the donation to anyone. Roosevelt kept that promise. He always had. The second thing Michael did was more careful and cost him more to think through. He had a contact, a woman named Sandra Pope, who had worked in public relations for 20 years and now ran her own firm and knew everyone in every room that mattered in American media. He called Sandra and asked her, without explaining why, whether she knew anyone in the New York publishing world who paid attention to literary fiction. Sandra gave him 3 names. He wrote 3 short emails. In each one he mentioned, without any identifying details, without attaching his own name, that he had encountered the work of the author of a debut novel called The Box Under the Bed, published by a small press, and that he believed the author's second manuscript represented something rare and worth serious attention. He did not name Celeste Drummond. He did not name Michael Jordan. He sent 3 emails from an address Sandra set up for him and waited. Then he went back to his life, because his life did not pause for personal reckonings. The ownership conversations with the Charlotte franchise were accelerating. There were meetings in New York, then Charlotte, then back in Chicago. He moved through his days with the discipline that had always been his greatest tool. Forward, focused, purposeful, one task at a time. Except now there was a second thing happening underneath all of it, a quieter thing. The thing that happens when a person has finally stopped running fast enough to outrun their own history and has to carry it with them instead. He thought about the library. He thought about it more than was practical or useful. He thought about the child-sized chair and the rain on the windows, and a young woman doing all the voices for a dragon who was afraid of his own fire. He thought about the note on the kitchen counter. He thought about what it meant that the most honest 11 words anyone had ever said to him had been written on a piece of paper and left behind when the person who wrote them walked out. He called his friend Marcus Webb on a Thursday evening. Marcus was a former player, retired now, living in Atlanta with his wife and 3 daughters and a dog he complained about constantly and clearly loved. Marcus called every 2 weeks and always talked too long, and Michael had never once told him to shorten it. "You're different quiet," Marcus said that Thursday. "I'm always quiet on the phone," Michael said. "No," Marcus said, "you're different quiet. You're the quiet of a man who has been thinking about something he is not going to tell me about." Michael did not say anything. "Something happened," Marcus said. "It was not a question." See, Michael told him, "Not everything. Enough. The diner, the apron, the safety pin, the belly, the note he still thought about after 3 years, the conversation at 10 o'clock, the 12 words. He kept saying 12, and then correcting himself, it was 11. Written on a kitchen counter by a woman in a gray wool coat who had packed her bag without throwing anything. Marcus listened all the way through without interrupting, which was unusual for him. When Michael finished, Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know what your problem has always been?" "Tell me," Michael said. "You think what you feel counts for less than what you do. That's a basketball player's disease. Everything is performance. Everything is the stat line. But she doesn't want your stat line, MJ. She never did. Yarn, that's why you couldn't keep her." Michael sat with that. "What do I do?" he said. It was not a question he asked people often. It cost him something to ask it. "You already know," Marcus said. "You knew the minute you walked into that diner. The question is whether you're going to be the first kind of man or the second kind." Michael said nothing. "You know the difference," Marcus said. "Yeah," Michael said quietly. "I know." He went back to the Blue Spoon the following Tuesday, 8:30, the same booth, the same order. He was going to be the first kind of man, even if he had no idea yet what that was going to cost him. December came to Chicago the way it always does. Not gradually, not politely, but all at once, overnight. He, like a decision that had already been made somewhere else and simply arrived to be enforced. The temperature dropped 15 degrees in a single Tuesday. The wind off the lake turned sharp and personal. The city pulled its coat tighter and kept moving, the way Chicago always kept moving, because stopping was not in its nature and never had been. Michael came to the Blue Spoon every Tuesday in December. He came at 8:30, after the dinner rush had thinned and the restaurant had settled into its quieter self. He wore a hat pulled low and a plain dark jacket, and he sat in the back booth and ordered black coffee and whatever the soup was that night without asking what it was. A habit he had picked up without realizing it. And without knowing yet that Miss Patrice Waller considered this the highest possible compliment a customer could pay her kitchen. He always waited, and Celeste always came. Not right away. She had tables to finish, orders to close out, the small, precise work of ending a shift with everything done properly, because that was how she did things. But at some point during the evening, 5 minutes, sometimes 10, once nearly 20, she would come to the back booth and sit across from him and they would talk. It did not look, from the outside, like anything dramatic. 2 people in a booth in a quiet diner, coffee going cold on one side, a glass of water on the other, voices low, no tears, no raised hands, no performance of any kind. But what was happening between them in those Tuesday evenings was more real than most things that looked dramatic from the outside. They talked the way they had talked in the library, without agenda, without armor, without either of them pretending to be a simpler version of themselves than they actually were. He told her about the franchise conversations, about what it meant to him to build something in basketball that wasn't about playing anymore, about whether ownership was something he actually wanted or something he wanted to want, and how he wasn't always sure he knew the difference. She listened. She asked the question he had not yet asked himself. Does it feel like something you are moving toward or something you are running from? He sat with that question for a full minute before answering. Nobody in his life asked him questions like that. Nobody had in a very long time. She told him about the second novel, about the chapter she had been stuck on for 6 weeks and had finally broken through by writing it from the wrong character's point of view, from the person she had been avoiding giving a voice to, the one who was hardest to be fair to, and discovering that being fair to the hardest person in the story was exactly what the book had been waiting for. He asked what made that character so hard to write. She looked at him across the table with that clear, reading look. He meant well, she said. That is always the hardest kind. He held her eyes. He took that in without defending himself or deflecting it, which was new, which was, he thought, perhaps the point. On the second Tuesday, he told her about the emails to the publishers. All of it, plainly, with nothing held back. 3 contacts, Sandra Pope, no names attached, just a question placed quietly into the right rooms. He told her before she could find out some other way, because she deserved to know first, and he was done being the kind of man who let important things come out sideways. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked how many. 3, he said. Only 3. She told him she had been sending the manuscript out herself for 6 months. No response. 6 months of careful, professional query letters going out into silence and coming back as nothing. He said he knew that was not right. He said the book deserved better than silence. She looked at him for a long time, not angry, not yet decided, the look of a woman doing honest math. I'll tell you next Tuesday how I feel about it, she said. She did. She sat down across from him the following week and said she was not angry. She said it carefully, meaning it precisely, not as a performance of graciousness, but as a fact she had arrived at after genuine thought. She was not angry because he had not attached his name to it, had not made it about himself, had not turned her work into a favor she owed him. He had simply opened a door and stepped back from it. That was different. She could see the difference now. What she did not tell him, not yet, was that she had been writing again every morning with a new kind of energy. That something about the Tuesday evenings had loosened something in her that had been tight for a long time. That she was sleeping better. That the second novel, which had been moving slowly for months, had begun to move the way water moves when it finally finds the downhill. Not rushing, just finding its natural direction and following it without resistance. She kept those things to herself. She was still careful. She had earned the right to be careful, and she intended to use it. On the third Tuesday, Michael came in and found her sitting alone at the counter before her shift had started. Her apron was not yet tied. Her order pad was still in her pocket. She was sitting very still, holding a letter with both hands, looking at it the way you look at something that has changed the temperature of the room. He sat down beside her without asking if he could. "What happened?" he said. She held the letter out to him. It was from a publisher in New York, not the small press. A larger one, a real one, the kind with a long history and a catalog of books that mattered. They had read the manuscript of the second novel, They wanted to speak with her. They had come to it through an independent contact they did not name. They had also, in the meantime, acquired a copy of The Box Under the Bed and read it. They used the words significant and rare in the same sentence. Michael read every word. He looked up. "That's one of your three," she said. "Yes," he said. She looked at the letter again. Her face was doing several things at once. The complex private arithmetic of a person receiving news they have worked very hard for and are not quite sure yet how to hold. Relief and disbelief, and something older underneath both of them. Something that had been waiting in a back room for a long time. And then she looked at him directly. Her eyes were bright but steady. "Thank you," she said. "Not because I could not have gotten here without you. I believe I could have, eventually. But because you did something kind without asking for anything in return. That is new, Michael. From you." He did not argue with it. He did not explain it or justify it or turn it into a speech. He just received it, the way you receive something true, quietly and with both hands. "Call them today," he said. She looked at the letter one more time, and then, for the first time since he had walked into the Blue Spoon on the night of October 14th, she smiled. Fully, completely. The smile from the library. The one that had been in the back of his mind for 3 years, like a song he couldn't stop hearing. "I was already planning to," she said. She went home that evening and called the publisher. They spoke for 45 minutes. At the end of the call, they made an offer. It was not a large advance, but it was real money, enough money. The kind that changes what the next season looks like without changing who you are. She sat on the edge of her bed in the honey yellow room she had painted for the baby and cried. Not sad tears, the other kind. The ones that come when something you worked for with your whole body and your whole heart finally arrives. And the arriving of it is almost too large to fit inside an ordinary evening. She called Imani. Imani screamed loud enough that Celeste had to hold the phone at arm's length. She called Desmond in London. It was late there. He picked up on the second ring. And he said he was happy for her and sounded like he meant every syllable. She did not call Michael, not because she did not want to, but because she was still learning, carefully, honestly, one Tuesday at a time, how much of the door to open and how wide. She sent him one word by message. It said, "Yes." He wrote back 2 words. They said, "I know." And on the following Tuesday, he came in at 8:30 and sat in the back booth with his black coffee and his soup. And she came and sat across from him, and they talked about the future. Not theirs together, not yet, just the future itself, the plain and open fact of it. And it felt, for the first time in a very long time, like a country she might actually be allowed to live in. The baby did not wait for January 8th. He had his own schedule, the way all important things do. He arrived on January 4th at 4:17 in the morning in room 312 of Northwestern Memorial Hospital, weighing 7 pounds and 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and a voice that made every nurse on the floor stop what they were doing for just a moment and listen. Imani Brooks was there. She had driven Celeste to the hospital at 11 the previous night when the contractions came close enough together to mean business. And she had slept, if you could call it sleeping, in the plastic chair beside the bed, waking every hour, keeping quiet watch the way a person does when they love someone, and understand that love is sometimes mostly just showing up and staying. She held Celeste's hand through the hardest hours without saying anything unnecessary, which is precisely what a best friend is for. Desmond had landed at O'Hare at 2 in the morning. The moment Celeste's contractions had started the previous evening, she had called him, her voice calm and steady and practical. She had always been the most practical person in any room, especially in rooms that asked the most of her. And he had been on the phone for 30 seconds before she heard him moving, heard the sound of a bag being pulled from somewhere, heard him saying to someone in the background that he had to go, that it was the baby, that it was now. He took the first available flight out of Heathrow. He sat in the middle seat between a businessman and a woman with a sleeping child, and he did not sleep at all, and he did not mind. He took a cab straight from the terminal. He arrived at room 312 at 3:40 in the morning, still in his travel clothes, his eyes red from the flight and from something that was not the flight, and he came through the door quietly in case Celeste was resting. She was not resting. He crossed the room and took her hand and did not say anything about the past or make any promises about the future. He was simply present, which was exactly what the moment asked for and exactly what he gave. He was in the room when Eli was born. He stood at the side of the bed with his hand over his mouth and his eyes bright and filling. And when the baby's voice filled the room for the first time, that enormous, indignant, world-announcing cry of a person arriving somewhere they have strong opinions about. Desmond made a sound that was not quite a word and was not quite a sob, but was somewhere between the two, in the territory that belongs only to moments this size. Celeste looked at him and said softly, "It is okay. You can." He did. He turned slightly away and cried the way men cry when they have finally stopped arguing with the size of what they feel. They named the boy Eli Desmond Drummond. Celeste had chosen the name weeks earlier, sitting alone in the honey yellow room with a baby names book open in her lap and the radiator ticking warmly beside her. Eli, a name that meant something larger than any single person, a name that felt like a beginning. He was perfect. Or not in the way people say a baby is perfect to mean cute or easy or without trouble. Perfect in the way that a thing is perfect when it is exactly what it is supposed to be, complete and present and entirely itself from the very first second. Imani held him at 5 in the morning and cried into his dark hair. Desmond held him at 6 and stood at the window with him against his shoulder, looking out at the black Chicago sky beginning to turn the particular gray that comes just before the light, and did not speak for a long time. Celeste watched them both and felt something she did not have a word for. Something larger than relief and quieter than joy and deeper than either. The feeling of a life that has arrived at a place it worked very hard to reach. Michael Jordan did not know about any of this until January 6th. He found out because of a wrong number and a tired best friend. Imani, running on 2 hours of sleep and trying to call her sister to give the news, scrolled to the wrong name in her phone. She called Michael's number by mistake. She had it saved because Celeste had made her add it the previous year. Quietly, practically, just in case. The way Celeste did most things. Michael answered on the first ring. It was a Tuesday morning. He had been awake since 5. Imani realized her mistake halfway through her first sentence and started to apologize. Michael stopped her. "Is she okay?" he said. His voice was very still. The stillness of a person who has asked the only question that matters and is holding themselves very carefully around it while they wait for the answer. A pause. "She had the baby," Imani said. "A boy. His name is Eli. Both of them are healthy." Michael sat down. He was standing in his kitchen making coffee, and he sat down in the chair at the kitchen table the way a person sits when their legs have decided the news is bigger than standing. He set his hand flat on the table. He breathed. "Both healthy," he said again. Not a question, just the words out loud, because they needed to be said out loud to be fully real. "Yes," Imani said. She paused. She was not a woman who kept her opinions small, but she kept this one to herself because this was not the moment for it. "I dialed wrong. I'm sorry." "Please don't apologize," Michael said. "Thank you for telling me. I mean that." He asked if there was anything Celeste needed. Imani considered this. She was fair with it. She thought about it honestly before she answered. "Well, she needs sleep and soup and someone to deal with the dog from next door that keeps getting into the courtyard because she always feeds it." Imani paused. "But actually, she is fine. She is always fine. You know that about her." "I do," Michael said quietly. He did not go to the hospital. He thought about it for exactly the length of time it took to understand that going was not what this moment asked for. The birth of Eli Desmond Drummond belonged to Celeste and Desmond and Imani and the nurses in room 312 and the January dark outside the window. It did not belong to Michael Jordan. He understood that clearly, and he stayed where he was, which was its own kind of growth. What he did instead was call a florist he had used once before and trusted completely. He did not order roses. He had remembered for 3 years, that Celeste had told him once in the library on a Tuesday in May that roses were what people sent when they had not thought carefully enough. She had said it lightly, not as a complaint, just as an observation, and he had filed it away in the part of him that kept everything she said. He ordered white freesia and hyacinths and a single stem of honeysuckle, because she had told him once that honeysuckle was the smell of every summer she had ever loved as a child, and that a smell like that could bring back a whole decade in a single breath. The card was short. He wrote it himself, without assistance, without drafts. It said, "Eli's a perfect name. I am glad you are both well." He signed it with one word: Michael. And the flowers arrived at the hospital on the afternoon of January 6th. Imani read her the card while Celeste sat up in bed with Eli against her chest, learning, the way every new mother learns it, as if for the first time in the history of the world, the specific and unrepeatable weight of her own child sleeping. Celeste listened to the card. She read it herself. She looked at it for a long time. She did not say anything. But later, after Imani had gone to get coffee from the machine down the hall, and Desmond had fallen asleep in the chair with his chin on his chest, and the room had settled into the soft hum of a hospital night, Celeste sat alone with Eli in the quiet and allowed herself to feel something she had been very deliberate about not feeling too quickly. Not love. She already had that. Something more careful than love. Something that required more information and more time and more honesty than love alone could provide. She looked at Eli's face. He had Desmond's nose and her forehead, and something around the eyes that was entirely his own, entirely new, entirely himself. A whole person already, with opinions and a future, and a whole long life waiting just on the other side of this small, warm, perfect beginning. She thought about 3 months. She thought about what she had said in the Blue Spoon, standing at the edge of something she could not yet fully see. Ask me that again in 3 months. It had been almost exactly 3 months. She looked at her son. She breathed. She thought, something is coming that I do not know the shape of yet. She was right. She had always been the best reader in any room. So Celeste went home from the hospital on January 8th, the original due date, as if the universe, having let Eli arrive 4 days early, had decided to let everything else land exactly on schedule. Imani drove her. Eli was in the car seat Imani had installed 3 weeks ago. Properly, carefully, watching 4 instructional videos, and then having the man at the fire station on Kedzie Avenue check it twice, because she was not the kind of person who did important things halfway. Celeste sat in the back beside the car seat with one hand resting lightly near Eli's feet. Not gripping, just present. The way you stay close to something you cannot quite believe is real yet. The apartment was warm. The radiator was working. The honey yellow room was waiting. Imani stayed for the first week, sleeping on the couch and waking for the night feedings, without complaint, and cooking large pots of things that could be reheated at any hour. Jollof rice, lentil soup, the sweet potato stew that Celeste's grandmother used to make, which Imani had learned from a handwritten recipe card Celeste kept folded inside the back cover of her oldest notebook. Desmond stayed for 2 weeks. He slept on the other end of the couch. He learned to change a diaper in under 90 seconds by the 3rd day, which he reported with quiet satisfaction. He held Eli in the evenings while Celeste ate dinner with both hands free, standing at the kitchen counter, watching them from across the room with something in her chest she could not name, but did not need to. He cooked. The jollof rice he made on the 2nd evening was, and Celeste said this directly, because she was always direct, the best thing she had eaten in months. He looked genuinely pleased by this, in the way of a person who takes feeding people seriously. They did not talk about the future in large terms. They were both too honest for large terms right now. Instead, they talked in the small, practical language of people navigating something new together. Who would handle which logistics from which city, what the arrangement would look like in the coming months, how Desmond could be present for Eli's life from London in ways that were real and consistent and not just occasional. It was not a romantic conversation. It was something more durable than romantic. It was 2 adults being honest about a situation that asked the best of them, and giving it. Desmond left for London on a Sunday at the end of January. He had a morning flight. He was up before dawn, moving quietly through the apartment, drinking coffee at the kitchen window while the city was still dark. Celeste came out with Eli in her arms because Eli had decided that 4 in the morning was an excellent time to be awake and interested in things. Desmond held the baby for a long time before he left. He stood at the window again, the same window, the same posture as the night Eli was born, and looked at his son's face with an expression that had no name in any language Celeste knew. Then he handed Eli back with the careful, practiced confidence of a man who had learned in 2 weeks how to transfer a sleeping infant without waking him. He kissed Celeste's forehead. She kissed his cheek. That was exactly right for what they were, and both of them knew it. He went to London. For 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday in February, Celeste called Michael. She was clear with herself about why. She was not calling from fear. She was not calling from loneliness. She was not calling because she had run out of other options, because she had not, because she never waited until she had run out of options before she made a move. She was calling because she had sat with the words she had said to him in the Blue Spoon long enough to know what she wanted to say next. He picked up on the second ring. "Michael," she said. "Celeste." His voice was careful the way a person is careful when they are very glad to hear something and are trying not to make it too large too fast. "I have a question," she said. "Go ahead." "That thing you said, that you want to know I will be okay, that if I am not, you want to help me be?" She paused. "Not for effect, to be precise. Are you still saying that?" A pause on his end, brief and honest. "Yes," he said, "I am still saying that." "Then here is what okay looks like for me right now," she said. "I have a book coming out in September. I have a son who is 12 days old and already has opinions about the ceiling fan. I have an apartment that is warm and small and mine. I do not need to be rescued. I never did. But I think—" She stopped. She said the next part slowly. "The way you say something you have thought about carefully and want to get exactly right. I think I would like to have coffee with you. Not at the diner, somewhere new. As two people who meant something to each other and now mean something different. Not less, just different." She heard him breathe. It was the breath of a man receiving something he had not let himself expect. "I can do that," he said. "Good," she said. "Saturday. You pick the place. Somewhere neither of us has been." "Done," he said. She heard the smile in it. She did not comment on it, but she felt the corner of her own mouth move in response, quietly, privately, in the kitchen of her warm small apartment, with Eli asleep in the next room, and the radiator ticking, and the February wind pressing gently against the windows that finally, properly, closed all the way. They met that Saturday in Hyde Park. Michael was there first. He was sitting at a table by the window in a coffee shop 2 blocks from where they used to live, wearing a gray jacket and a wool hat and looking from across the street. Before he knew she was watching, like a man who was trying very hard to be still and not quite managing it. Celeste came in with Eli in a carrier against her chest. She had bought her own coffee at the counter before sitting down. Michael noticed this and said nothing about it, which told her he understood why. He stood up when she walked in. He looked at Eli for a long time. The baby was awake, dark eyes moving around the room, with the calm, total attention of someone who has recently arrived somewhere and finds everything equally remarkable. "Can I?" Michael said. She looked at him for a moment, then she nodded. He reached out one large hand. Eli's fingers found his index finger immediately and closed around it with complete conviction. The grip of a person who does not yet know about hesitation or history or the complicated weight of the adults in the room. Michael held very still. He was not going to cry. He was absolutely, completely on the precise edge of it. "He is strong," Michael said. His voice was steady. "He gets that from his mother," Celeste said. She sat down across from him and wrapped both hands around her cup. They stayed for 2 hours. They talked about the book deal and the bobcats and what Eli's face looked like when the ceiling fan was on and what Celeste's grandmother's kitchen had smelled like and what it meant to build something from the beginning when you had no map for it and only your own sense of direction to follow. They did not talk about getting back together. Neither of them reached for that. It was not dishonesty, it was accuracy. They both understood, without needing to say it aloud, that this was not what the morning was. What the morning was harder to name and more important. It was 2 people choosing, slowly, honestly, with the damage still visible, and neither of them pretending otherwise. To still be something to one another. Something that had no category yet. Something they would have to build as they went, without a blueprint, without a guarantee, one Saturday at a time. When Celeste stood to leave, Eli still warm against her chest, Michael held the door. "Same time next Saturday?" he said. She stepped out into the cold. She adjusted Eli's hat. She turned back. "Bring better coffee next time," she said. "This place is terrible." He laughed, open and full and unguarded, the way he had laughed in the library for the first time all those years ago, on a tiny chair with his knees up to his ears. She walked out into the cold Chicago morning. She did not look back. She did not need to. She already knew he was still standing there. There is one more thing. There is always one more thing, and this one has been running underneath everything else in this story like a quiet river under frozen ground. Present the whole time, moving the whole time, invisible until the ice finally breaks. You remember that Celeste called Desmond the evening she found out she was pregnant. You remember he answered on the second ring. You remember he said he could not come back to Chicago, that his mother was sick, that his family needed him in London. Already that he would support Celeste from where he was, in whatever way she allowed. All of that was true. Here is what else was true. By December, 2 months before Eli was born, 1 month before the publisher's letter arrived, right in the middle of those quiet Tuesday evenings in the back booth of the Blue Spoon, Desmond's mother had recovered, fully, completely. She was walking in the park on Sunday mornings and cooking jollof rice for the whole family on weekends, and telling Desmond with considerable firmness that a man his age had no business living, like he was still a student in a foreign city when he had a child coming into the world. His contract in London had ended in November. He had applied and quietly, without telling Celeste, and without wanting to pull her toward a decision she had not made freely, for a position with a structural engineering firm in Chicago. A good firm, the kind working on buildings meant to be both beautiful and useful at the same time, which he had always believed was the only kind worth building. He received the offer in December. He accepted it 3 days before Eli was born. He was not going back to London. He had never planned to tell Celeste before he was certain. He had not wanted Hope to do the work that reality needed to do. So he waited. He waited until the morning of January 8th, the original due date, the day Celeste came home from the hospital with Eli in his car seat, and the whole new life waiting in the warm apartment. And then he sat on the edge of the couch and told her plainly. He was staying. If she would let him, he wanted to be here. For Eli, and for whatever still existed between them, if she believed anything did. Celeste stood in the doorway of her own apartment, with her son against her chest and the January light coming through the windows that finally closed all the way, and she understood, completely, in her whole body, why she had said what she said to Michael Jordan in the Blue Spoon 3 months earlier. Ask me that again in 3 months. She had not known Desmond was staying when she said it. She had not known what January held. But she had known, the way she always knew things in the quiet place underneath the words, that the story was not finished, that something was still arriving, that the shape of her life was not yet what it was going to be, and that patience was not the same as waiting. Why, and that the difference between the two was everything. She was right. She looked at Desmond on the edge of the couch. She looked at Eli in the carrier against her chest, his dark eyes open, already watching, already reading the room the way his mother had always read every room she had ever walked into. She said one word, "Stay." And just like that, on a cold January morning, in a small apartment with honey yellow walls, and a radiator that worked, and windows that finally, properly, completely closed, the next chapter began. Not the one anyone had written for her, not the one anyone had expected, the one that was actually true, the one she had built herself, one honest morning at a time, from almost nothing. With one good knife in the kitchen drawer and 2 hours every day before the world got loud, and a voice that had always known exactly what it wanted to say, and had finally, fully found the page. And that is the story of Celeste Drummond. A woman who lost everything and built something better. A man who had everything and finally learned what mattered. And a little boy named Eli who arrived right on time. even when nothing else did. Before you go, we want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city, your country, or just say hello in the comments below. We read every single one, and it always means the world to us to know that people from all over are sitting with these stories together. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, please hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find stories like this one. Stories about love and loss and what it means to start over with nothing but your own 2 hands and the quiet belief that something better is still possible. And if you believe that kindness is worth spreading, if you think the world needs more stories that remind us what people are capable of when they choose to be their best selves, then subscribe to this channel. Hit that button and join a community of people who show up every week for stories that matter. 1 like, 1 subscribe, 1 comment telling us where you are in the world. That is how kindness spreads, 1 person at a time. And right now there is another story waiting for you. It is on your screen right now. Go ahead and click it. We think you are going to love it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Now go spread some kindness.